Well, I am more of a Hanukkah guy, but I felt like 8 wasn't enough, so here are the 12 misconceptions of foundation training. I wrote this up quick. We'll just go through it. There's 12 ideas here that I face on the day-to-day about foundation training, because I pretty much tell everyone to do it. Anytime anything's going on, are you doing that? Because if you're not doing that, that's where we need to start. That's the foundation of the foundation training and the foundation of getting back to proper movement. Because what we're doing as chiropractors, and I like this guitar analogy because you use it as chiropractors to look for symmetry, right? We want the string to be balanced, to be playing that right note. So either it's too tight or it's too loose. So we want it perfectly, right? Sometimes there's rigidity, there's immobility. That's what we're trying to address as chiropractors. What we can't address really is instability. That needs to be strengthened. And then once you have stability, you'll hold your chiropractic adjustments longer. That's the goal there. So first misconception, it is a lighter, rehabilitative form of yoga and stretching. There's always going to be stretching in foundation training. There's stretching as I'm sitting here breathing, there's stretching. Okay, so yes, there's stretching involved, but that's not what's important about it. So let's just read this. In a lot of ways, FT's foundation training, by the way, to shorten it up, is the opposite of yoga. So we teach proximal stability and strength with distal range of motion, which means the hips and the shoulders are going to initiate the movement while the spine tries to stay lengthened and locked. This is why foundation training tends to get harder, and I think this is another reason I'm getting into, but the more you're able to keep that spine stable without bending, flexing, or extending, then you are actually going to have better isolated hip and shoulder movement. So this will give us a powerful whole body active stretch. So there's an inhibited, weak, overstretched muscle that's active, shortening, which is stretching what's tight. Every muscle has an antagonist, which does the opposite motion. So to address that fully, we need to retrain what's weak. Otherwise, if we just stretch all the time, it just comes back, right? Same with chiropractic. There are special cases where a chiropractic adjustment can bring symmetry and actually cause your nervous system to interact with that muscle better. Most of the case, we're dealing with postural issues. Not saying that chiropractic doesn't work. You just need to work with it. That's another slide. Let's keep going. So, give us a powerful whole body active stretch without even needing to move deeper into a position, finding the tension early. The problem with yoga is that without having stability in our spines first, it will encourage hypermobility, too much movement in joints that are already doing the bulk of the movement. So if you don't have stability, as soon as you start doing something there's strength involved in yoga, but also a lot of range of motion. That's the movement is what they're getting at. But we might be training movement in already areas that are trained to move. And the areas that are stiff and restricted are not going to move. They continue to be compressed and restricted. Because to find that stretch really needed in your hips, sometimes you have to be doing more and more elaborate moves to try to find that stretch, all the while you're creating instability in other joints. And you come to your chiropractor, you're compressed, your spine doesn't look anything like a human spine should look. I see this on the day-to-day. You shouldn't need the chiropractor, right? If it's working, why are you coming in 3 times a week to get adjusted? Something's not right. Take a step back, look at it. Don't miss the forest for the trees. So, let's say that again. Hypermobility in joints that are already doing the bulk of the movement while not addressing the restricted areas that need to move better. I like to say yoga teaches you how to do yoga better. If you're really looking for that extra range of motion, great. Don't put the cart before the horse. We need stability before mobility. So, but it trains us to move wrong. Yoga trains us to move wrong when it comes to basic movement. What do you want out of your life? Do you want to move better without pain? You care about sticking your head in between your legs and kissing your own butt. No, that's not my goal. I would like to be able to do my job, not go home and have to stretch every night and be in pain or wake up feeling like I was hit by a truck. That's my goal. So think about your goals. If your goal is to be a gymnast, then yes, you're looking to do these things. Foundation training teaches you how to do the 2 things we do most often better. Breathe and bend, right? Sitting is bending. Walking is bending. It's all hinging of the hips. Breathing, 30,000 breaths a day. Lots of bending. Bending over to pick something up 4,000 times a day. How much do you walk? How much do you sit? These are the 2 things you do most often. So can we get better at those? Can we train? We have to overtrain to get better at those. Bring balance. Number 2, it is only for lumbopelvic stability. Let's just read before I say wrong, but I want to say wrong. There is a definite learning curve, but that is why it is best to work on the basics. Anchoring and decompression. Two things I always start in my classes, even before the hinging. A lot of times people find the freebie exercises for foundation training on YouTube, and there's always these hinging motions. You're like, this is great. And I remember, like, I was there too. I remember doing the 12-minute founder like 6 years ago. It did make a difference for sure. But the more I've come back to it, I've learned, like, let's retrain the basics, not even getting into the hinging, but working on this anchoring and decompression, the pelvis, the hips pulling down as the spine lifts. So yes, that's a lot of lumbo-pelvic stability, but if we're lifting from our shoulders to decompress the low back, you're creating problems. You're going to get these tight upper traps and headaches, a degeneration in the neck. It's all how you because a lot of us already decompress from our shoulders. I watch you breathe. I feel your shoulders. I know you're trapped. Your spine doesn't lie, is what I like to say. So I know you're doing things wrong. Don't lie to me. Don't lie to me. I know what you're doing because your spine tells me. It is not your friend. It tells you. It tattles on you. So anchoring and decompression. A lot of classes, lots of stuff, information on there. Those two concepts are big and broad. I'm not going to try to explain them all right now. But before we learn how to bend or hinge, if you will, we need those two. We need stability. Anchoring and decompression leads to stability. This way we address all the areas of the body at the same time. By teaching the lumbopelvic area to do its part, it brings strength to the spine and allows the shoulders to relax so they do not do the bulk of the decompression and breathing work, right? Just like you said, the shoulders need to relax, not lift. Lift the spine. Okay, the spine is lifting. The shoulders are actually kind of anchoring as well. Their own anchoring process is pulling down and pressing into the socket. That's one thing that anchoring is all about, is getting those humeral heads in the socket, getting the femoral head in the socket. And you'll just feel like, oh, that feels really good. Just compressing and holding those in there as the spine decompresses. So this little picture helps us what we're doing here. So we're trying to get that eccentric movement, concentric, right? We're getting that stretch. And then once that muscle, that hamstring is at that tension, eccentric, you're actually teaching it to be where it needs to be, because then you're pulling your hips back up instead of extending from the spine to bring it back up. You're using the hamstring in a lengthened position, which really trains it. Isometrics really train the idea of pulling in, like these arrows show. That's that anchoring, pulling the hips into the socket without losing length. Because a lot of us would just compress to help the lumbar spine, to help our hips move better, especially when we're at the gym, especially throughout our daily lives, and that leads to degeneration of the spine. Number 3, it does not address one-sided issue, ipsilateral things. Or I need to get rehab or surgery on this joint so the rest of the imbalances will go away. This is almost like a chiropractic philosophy as well. It's like we fix the one bone, it's a hole in one, the rest of the spine will line up. That can happen. And I remember I used to feel this way. Actually, I guess I wrote this in the slide. I used to feel this way after shattering both my heels 10 years ago. And I had trouble with my right foot, more than 11, a while ago. A dozen. I had such trouble with my right foot because that's the one I had surgery on. Surprisingly, the one I didn't have surgery on actually did really well. They said I would have to have surgery like a year later. I'm like, we're not going to do that. I had so much trouble with my right foot that I was convinced something was out of place, some bone in the foot needed to be corrected. And once I started addressing how it was moving, I started feeling relief for the first time in 7 years. I remember there was just a massage therapist who was going to chiropractic school. He's like, why are you walking that way? Because I wasn't really walking on my heels, and my pelvic structure was shifted forward. And I find this in a lot of people, is that we don't weight the heels enough. The pelvic structure shifts forward, and it's not that you have all broken your heels. It's that we have shoes that tilt our weight into the toes, don't allow our feet to grab. Our weight is never shifted into the heels. So the spine is compressed all the time. This is why foundation training trains you out of those patterns, because normally we wouldn't have to worry about this. And you watch kids, they're really good at it. They know how to move, they know how to hinge. Flat surfaces and shoes train us out of natural movement, the way we should move. So it does address one-sided issues, because first we have to address, even with like scoliosis, something that's kind of one-sided or it's twisted, or you got curvature to one way, this torsion of the spine, or even Scheuermann's would be more bilateral usually because it's a big hunch in the back, something genetic. We'll talk about that one later. But scoliosis, more of like a one-sided issue, right? We still have to bring stability and length to that spine. We can try to retrain the curve the other way, but it could still be compressed. And as soon as you stop doing those, but if you actually train yourself how to move better, then you're working on it every day. It's not that 5 minutes of foundation training changes your life every morning. It's that it gets your brain talking to the muscles it should be. Each day you're moving a little bit better, doing a little bit better. You're like, this is how I should be moving throughout the day. So I feel like we can't really address these torsional issues, these one-sided issues, until we have stability. Again, we're trying to put the cart before the horse. I do it every day as a chiropractor, where I'm trying to address torsional twisted injuries, and you feel better, you do better, and you kind of hit this plateau, and I'm not really getting better. I need another chiropractor who's going to address my problems. And I know this thought because I've been there. As a student, you're going to all these different chiropractors. I'm sitting already all day long. So my chest would hurt. I'd have to pop everything out because my ribs would be so compressed. My foot was swollen like a balloon every morning. I would limp everywhere. So then my back was hurting. I couldn't exercise. I couldn't run. It was terrible. And I'm like, I just need the right chiropractor. And I'd go to everyone, try to get the foot adjustments. It's all about the foot adjustments, which is good. I learned a lot about the feet, and the feet are important. And there's nothing like a great ankle mobility. I'm not trying to downplay chiropractic. I'm not trying to blame chiropractors, but people get this in the mind, I just need that special doctor that's going to help me. And this is where you need to be. You need to be working on the foundation training. Work with your doctor. Stop expecting passive treatments to fix an active problem. You're moving wrong, right? We'll come back to that one. We'll come back to it right now. I just need a special chiropractor with a magical adjustment to fix my instability, right? I've said it, you've said it, we've all felt this way. Look in the mirror, it's you, right? Work on yourself. I've had people stop seeing me because I've said this to them, and that's okay, because I want to work on people who want to work on themselves. That's why I like working on athletes, because they're actually working on themselves already. I just want to steer them in a better direction. They already got the drive. People that are lazy, that just want a quick fix, you pay the bills, sure, but is my heart going to be in it when I'm working on you? No. Right? If you want me to care, you need to let me know that you care, right? It's not that much to ask. That's how you tip your chiropractor. You can't physically tip us, but if you want to tip me being I was doing the founder, that's already just want to cry, I think you did the founder. Oh gosh. That's my tip, okay? And then we work on it, and I'll take you in the back room, you show me what you're doing. It's I just spend a little 2 minutes on it. I give you my extra care because you care, right? It's not even foundation training. Even if you just ask me about an exercise, usually I'm, okay, you're working on it. That's great. So I think I already said this, but let's read it again. I went to many chiropractors during my time in school when my condition was the worst. And even when my first 3 years of practice was terrible. I got a little better because it was just moving, but other issues were arising. And I was just I was done. I'm man, I was already thinking by the time I'm 30, I won't be able to do this anymore. I'll probably be in a wheelchair. I was just expecting it. A lot of people, I think, run through the same process. Okay, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to start looking for another job, or I just sit all the time. I wonder if I can just sit in a chair and adjust people's necks. This is literal thoughts I was having to have, because I'm no one could fix me. It was just woe is me. This injury's too bad. I can't overcome it. You got to use that stuff as fuel to overcome, right? A lot of people are down who have something genetic that's against them. Use it as fuel to push you to better than you would ever be, even if you were normal, right? Whatever normal is. We're all broken. We're all broken. It was not just my foot, but my lower back, my neck, my chest. Probably things I don't remember. I remember my shoulder. I remember trying to adjust people. My shoulder was just so bad, stabbing pains. I've tried to work out, and I'd hurt random things that were on the opposite end of my foot, because it wasn't the foot that was the problem. It was just whole body, global systemic instability. So I went to many of the experts, upper cervical guys, and just the bone, took a million x-rays. I'm oh yeah, it makes sense. It all makes sense, and it's all good stuff. But I wasn't working with it. I was trying to work out, of course. I was trying to eat right, but I was missing this knowledge. And that's why I run this channel. That's why I push people to these exercises, because I know what it's like to be there. And I remember trying to muddle through the information. I've tried everything. So, and it's the simple, basic stuff. This seems so simple, but yeah, it's that simple. It's simple things are generally right. Work on the basics. Went to the experts, tried countless techniques, but it was not chiropractic. It's not the chiropractic didn't work with me. I wasn't working with it. All right. I don't even know what number we're on, but there's 12, so just hold in there. We got to be halfway. You should only do it when you are in pain. Right. You already know that's wrong. And then we say when the pain goes away, the problem is solved. And I do the same way. I start slacking off. It's like when you're in pain, you're like, you're all about it. Like, do the founder. Breathe. But I try to, even when I'm moving throughout the day, I'm trying to incorporate these hinging movements. Some people watch me, they're like, are you in pain? It's like, no, I'm doing this so I don't get in pain. It's like I'm just trying to move from the hips. I look like, I'm like I've just sprained my back sometimes because I'm really trying to get some of that. Sometimes I'm really trying to overtrain and get that isolated motion. Not that you should be moving that way all the time, but sometimes it's good to actually really force it. And some people see me like, what are you doing? He doesn't look like he's moving okay. Trying to train, always trying to train. Pain is the tip of the iceberg, right? It just sits above the water. There's this big thing underneath. It's a symptom. It's a warning. It's your body being like, hey, there's this lot of dysfunction. And I usually say it's like 10 times as worse as you think it is. Remember that. Just a little bit of back pain. You're like, oh, it's nothing. At least 10 times worse. They're showing not just about that joint, but that there's just a systemic problem. That's how you have to think about it. Global whole body problem. There's a lot of dysfunction, pathology, disease hidden below its surface. Pain will go away and the problems will persist or they will shift. Your body is good at compensating. That's what that's what the spine's job is. It doesn't actually have a lot of pain. It won't generate a lot of pain in the joints. Joints are what? Movement. So they have a lot of mechanoreception. They sense movement. Only 7% of your nerves actually will fire off pain signals. Nociception, we call it. So a lot of the other nerves have other jobs, especially your spine. You think about all these joints it has. It's good at dancing and moving around and flexing. Because like if something's locked up, it's getting pressure on a nerve. It's going to be like, okay, let's go this way. And I see these people standing, they'll be off to here. They had no idea because your body just, readjusted its proprioception. So you could keep going, right? It keeps you going. A lot of people have arthritis, and I think I'm about to say this. Many will be shocked by x-rays that show vast arthritic development, degeneration. People used to think that chiropractors were lying. They look at these films, and they're like, these are mine. My back doesn't even hurt. My pain's in my knee. I don't have all these spurring and degeneration and compression, where my discs look like flat little pancakes. That can't be me. Nothing hurts there. Well, discs and those joints don't have a lot of those type of nerves. It's usually the muscles that get damaged, unless there's direct nerve pressure, because you have those nerve roots that come out of the spine that do go to organs, right? The organs will refer pain sometimes, but sometimes if those nerves coming out of the spine are pressing on them, no, won't matter. If it is hitting your sensory nerves that are going to your arms and legs, though, yes, you get the numbness, you get the tingling, you get the burning pain. Could be compression in the nerve root, right? So that way it'll let you know. But by the time that is happening, this has been coming on for a long time. Decades. Think decades. You see arthritic development on x-ray, think 20 years. It's been coming around. So, experience symptoms elsewhere in the body, the knee hurts. Don't blame your knee. It's the rest of the body. You got to work all of it together. Foundation training should get easier over time. So people are like, oh yeah, I've mastered that. They've said it to me. I've mastered the foundation training. I'm like, well, great. I've been doing it for 5 or so years and I'm still learning. We're all new to foundation training. I'm always getting better. And I'm like, I'll be like teaching people it and they'll be like, why are you sweating and shaking? You just did that once. You did like the least 10 seconds and you're shaking, your voice is shaking and you're sweating. How is that happening? I've gotten better at doing it. So 5 minutes for me is a lot more for me than it will be for you when you're doing 5 minutes. And that 5 minutes will get harder and harder because like we said before, your spine gets better at opening up and decompressing, and you're getting better at the isolated hip and shoulder motion. So it's not about getting deeper into these positions, it's about finding the tension earlier, and that way it's opposite than yoga. I'm sorry, I keep saying the things, and then I'm just so good. I'm so good. It's like I wrote this, and then I speak. I have been doing foundation training since at least 2016. I don't remember when I started. I should go back to the beginning of my YouTube channel and see when but it was probably around then when I started. Because I remember I had the channel for a while, just like I was more like studying muscular imbalance. It started making sense. Then I came across some of Dr. Goodman's material, and the 12-minute founder. I'm like, this is kind of cool. And I did it a few times, and I'm like, my feet feel better since I've worked my hips. I don't understand, but I like it. And then really just got me curious. following a lot of their stuff. I really like it, really good. It's not that like they have the corner on posture. It's their principles that matter. There's nothing special about the exercises they teach. It's the principles that they're trying to teach. Stability is the principle they're trying to teach. Don't put the cart before the horse. You need stability. That's all we're trying to say. I'm not saying you got to do the founder. It's the only way, man. You can do it anyway. I was doing the founder. We had like this 12 days. It's funny because this is the 12 misconceptions. We had like a 12 days of death miss workout. I like doing CrossFit stuff, barbell stuff. You're increasing your load tolerance. You're lifting up weight. That's a good way to increase your endurance, your strength. I try to add a little bit of like foundation training principles in there. But don't worry, you add weight. Your spine's going to compress because you want to get stronger. That's not the goal. You're not trying to rehab at the gym, right? Trying to get stronger, trying to get mobility, trying to get endurance. Those are the goals there. But I need to be working on stability elsewhere. But like I was doing like the Frankenstein, front squats with the bar here. I just did the little founder. You add it in, little things like that. It's not that I'm doing it all the time. Just like take a little bit there and here and there and learn. There's other ways to address these instability issues, right? Because I know that I'm here all the time. I'm just going to overextend my wrist because I can't lock it. So I don't want to do an exercise that hurts me. That's the biggest thing, is recognizing like, okay, I might be able to get through that, this workout, next workout, but I know that eventually that's going to bother me if I don't work on this. I don't want to be cheating every time. So I'm finding balance there. So I found I don't even need to do a lot of the major hinging work to target all the restrictions in my body. We said this before. Trying to work on the basics. Anchoring, decompression. The better you get holding your spine in a decompressed state, lengthened, disc spaces opening, nerve roots decompressed, life is flowing. That's the chiropractic story, right? We're just addressing it. We're addressing these transversal spinalis muscles. The posterior chain is these deep muscles of the spine that hold us open. Lift the skull, push the tailbone away. The feet are driving up. We're breathing from the diaphragm, the pelvic floor. All your serratus muscles are expanding the rib cage versus just breathing from your upper accessory muscles where you get compressed and compressed. And your lower back, it's more unstable because it's not actually doing its job. It's not actually lifting the spine like it should. And that's why we injured the low back and like, oh, we'll put back braces. And the back brace works for a little bit, right? You've supported, but now your muscles of your spine are like, well, I wasn't doing much before, but now I'm really not going to do anything. And then you get injured even worse after you stop using the back brace because the pain went away and then major disc injury. Because pain was warning you that there was a deeper iceberg problem, right? Back to the iceberg. Hope that makes sense. I know I'm getting crazy here. I didn't even have coffee today. I need some. Right. So holding that decompressed state, lengthened, while getting more and more isolated movement from the hips and the shoulders, the tougher these seemingly simple movements will become. Right? Seems simple at first. Build on it. Foundation training teaches postural correction. I don't really care about posture. I never really did care about posture. Even when I was in chiropractic school, I'm like, well, we have natural asymmetries that we all have. And your body compensates. That's what it's good at. And it's not about getting rid of that rounding, getting rid of that forward head translation. It's about increasing your load tolerance. We have it right here. And a lot of people who do more of the functional strength training, this is their term. And a lot of times we're saying the same thing. It's like, decompress. No. Increase your load tolerance. It's the same thing. So we're not worried about like pelvic tilt. I used to be all about the pelvic tilt. You watch my really, really early videos. I was like crazy studying that, losing my mind, pulling my hair out, trying to like analyze all my patients. It's super tricky. Usually, I went through a stage where I'm like, no, I'm definitely posterior. I was 100% certain. I'm like, no, I'm definitely anterior. It has more to do with your spine than your pelvis, and that's, you get so focused on a symptom that it throws everything off. And yes, you should be thinking about the pelvis. And even then, I'm like, I know the pelvis is important, so it must be the tilt. And even chiropractic, we're looking at like tilt of the pelvis one way over the other, trying to address that, bring symmetry. But there's the bilateral issue where it's happening on both sides. That was harder to address. We can't really address that as chiropractors. We can kind of help it a little bit more. It's about how you're moving and training, because anything we do is just going to be undone by you. So forward head translation, the back hunch, we are simply trying to increase your load tolerance, the strength of the spine. Same with scoliosis. We're maybe never going to get any change with that scoliosis, but you're stabilizing it, so because it's going to get worse, because gravity is going to eventually compress you and twist you and make it worse, right? Get worse. If it gets worse, we can stop it from getting worse, right? So you may never get rid of that torsion. Usually when you're a young kid, you don't care, and you're not till me like you're 26 and you can't move, then you really start caring about this stuff. But by then it's already too late. You have the degenerative processes, that degeneration, the disc degeneration is probably not going to go away, but you can strengthen those muscles in those areas. Make your weaknesses your strength. You can still do that. Ability to decompress. Don't do it with your shoulders. Train your hips to do it. If anything, remember that. That's the big thing with foundation training, is training the hips, training the strength of that posterior chain, that spine. So we don't claim to solve scoliosis or like Schurman's, but I've seen amazing changes with people, even with Schurman's, working on foundation training, strength training, movement, right? But not just moving, but how you're moving. Simply trying to stabilize so it doesn't get worse. So don't think like, a lot of people I talk and they're like, I need to get a gym membership and just move, or I need to walk more. Walking can be destructive. Swimming can be destructive, right? Just because you're doing an anti-gravity thing doesn't mean it's not going to compress you. Sometimes swimmers are more compressed, right? Because you're not actually resisting gravity. You're kind of compressed in the water. And we need gravity. It's good. Push up against it. Against the weight of our own body. We need resistance. It's important. It helps build strength in the muscles. You damage muscle, heals back faster. You damage ligaments, they can't do anything. Joints, ligaments, they stiffen, they harden, right? To protect. That's stability, right? But it's a stability that's painful. I think I even say this. So, strength, endurance, mobility. Training will bring stability. That's the statement, right? I feel like I should have made this like false fact thing. Like they're like, oh yeah, do strength, endurance, mobility is going to lead to stability. Not always. It's how you do it, right? So one can have great strength, endurance, mobility, and lack stability in their central structure. Just because you have abs and big old muscles doesn't mean your spine is actually strong. And you can get away with it for a while. But I mean, like I said, degeneration, it's a slow thing. It sneaks up on you. The next thing you know, you got to get surgery for this and that. And you're like, well, I want to keep pushing. I got to keep pushing. Got to get in the gym. And I love that attitude. I love it. But to stop, take a step back, think about it. Work on stability. Once you get that stability, you can start training back into that strength and endurance. You can even turn the strength and endurance into stability exercises. Work on that so you can continue doing the things you love. Like me, I like throwing kettlebells around. It seems weird, but like I'm about that. An hour of pain, it's fun. It's about being with the crew, lifting heavy weight, trying to increase your max weight, get there, do things faster, and have that endurance through the day. But I need stability first, right? And some of the talks that Dr. Goodman does, the studies he's done, I really liked how he would look at someone who moves a lot, like a gold medalist, triathlon guy, compared to somebody who just sits at a desk all day, sharing the same degenerative patterns. It's like, well, there's two things to take away. Either it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to get degenerative and die. Or it's not about movement, but like we said, how you're moving, right? Train better movement. It's not that running and biking is bad. It's how you're approaching those things. And you could be strong and fast. Doesn't mean you're doing it right. Right. So it's not about moving more or lifting more or stretching more, but how we approach the two things we do most often, bend and breathe. So active, linked actively. We're not just stretching the hamstring as well as everything else, right? A lot of times when you do yoga, what's this lady doing? Pelvis is tucked posteriorly. Her whole back is being stretched. She's stretching the calf. Might not even be really getting that great of a hamstring stretch, even though that's probably what she's going for. Probably feeling it in even the plantar fascia that's getting stretched, right? It's a passive stretch. It's not active. Jesse here, he's got stability. He's keeping that pelvis locked, that sacroiliac joint compressed, trying to get that isolated hip motion, not drawn too much from the knees, trying to stretch here and then lift from there. That's what's, PNF stretching. I really like doing a lot of that because I'm training you. I'm stretching, and then I'm making you active. So I'm making you do an eccentric contraction. And then I stretch and we get more range of motion. Then you're active about it, right? That's kind of what we're doing here under foundation training. It's just you're doing it on yourself, and it's globally. It's everything. Like, look at the lat muscle. Stretching. Look at his forearms. Everything is working. Spreading. Fingers are stretching. His neck, suboccipitals, upper traps are stretching. His skull is driving away from his tailbone. Posterior chain is very active. His belly's not bottomed out. He's keeping that psoas engagement. There's a lot happening. The feet are actively pressing up. He's just not dropping into this. And you don't get overwhelmed with it. You add one little thing at a time. I just said a lot of things there. That's not even half the things that are going on. Add one thing at a time. One thing at a time. But learn it. You got to go through it. You got to be patient with it. Learn it right. Get the basics down. We need more movement in the spine to bring stability. Maybe some chiropractors are going to get mad here, but sometimes we use little guns, right? We use little clickers, impulse guns, activator, integrator. Why? Because sometimes areas in the spine are already hypermobile. They're unstable. So me going in there, it might really feel good for you at the time. It's like, wow, it feels so much better. But I kind of, I made that stability more unstable. Even though it felt good, even though we got it back in place, we kind of took stretched joint tissue and we just stretched it even more. Same with a lot of side postures. I'm like, why didn't you do the little side crunchy crunch today? You did more like the little drops and the gun. So we could feel the inflammation. If there's inflammation, there's injury. If there's pain, there's injury. If there's injury, there's instability. Especially if there's no cause of injury, there's instability. Or if there's a cause and it's like I stepped off my bed wrong and I blew out my sacroiliac joint, and obviously there's instability right there. You shouldn't be rolling out of bed and spraining one of the most stable joints in your body, right? Sacroiliac joint's got a lot of things holding that together. It takes years and years and years and years and years for that to become unstable enough for it to sprain. So movement, no, even walking can irritate that sacroiliac joint because you haven't trained the hips, your femurs to carry your weight. You've trained your SI joints to bend and open up. You've trained your lower lumbar spine to flex and extend to do most of your movement. It's, even with walking, I watch you walk, I can see where the motion's happening kind of more base of the spine, SI joints there, less in the hips that should be doing the majority of that movement. Bending, if you will. Hinging, if you will. Bend and breathe, right? That's why I say it, because we breathe a lot, the hips do a lot. So more often than not, joint restrictions are caused by inhibition of the posterior chain and not the other way around. So chiropractic can reset the system by removing restrictions and even in a few cases result in more activation of the posterior chain. There's going to be some errors in here. Sorry, guys. I wrote this quick. But most deal with reoccurring subluxations due to weakness. Subluxation, that's the chiropractic term for a bone being out that's causing nervous system interference, right? It just could be out very slightly. It's like a weight of a dime at a nerve. It can really inhibit a lot of its what it's transmitting, right? Its signal. Recurring subluxations are due to weakness in this, the posterior chain muscles. I just use the other word, transversal spinalis. All those little tiny muscles, the multifidus, all those things that fill that canal, hold things in place, right? Working together as a stabilizing structure. Weakness in these muscles and the ability of the hips to support the spine, right? That's where a lot of our subluxations are coming from in chiropractic. Not so much from just straight up injury. Usually a straight up injury, I'm like, I know we can help you, right? Because you probably knocked something out of place. There's probably some injury. You let that heal. We need to get anything you've knocked out of place in place. That's what chiropractors are kind of good at. We're even better at maintaining, right? When you're not in pain, that's when you should be seeing a chiropractor. So we're helping bring stability. You're helping strengthen your spine. We're taking out those twisted elements. You're keeping your spine strong. That way you're going to not only avoid injury in the future, but overall health will be better, right? Everything, your organ systems will be working better because there's less stress. Stress is the number one killer. So we don't need more movement in the spine. Sometimes we do. There's restricted areas. And usually it's from you lacking stability, right? Because the spine's going to be like, well, I need to fuse this. I need to begin fusing this as a self-defense mechanism because I need to protect the nerves. And that's why some areas are really hard to move because your body's guarded and it's like it knows it doesn't need to move. And sometimes it just needs light force in the more unstable areas, the areas that actually haven't begun to harden yet. Your body gives you a grace period where it gives you a chance to correct the problems before these joints and ligaments start creating this osteoarthritis, forming bone as calcium deposits in the joint material, right? Essentially, it's fusing its segments, just like a doctor would go in and create a block vertebrae, two vertebrae together. Why? So the nerve roots don't go compressed. So it's fusing them. Your spine's going to do the same thing over time to bring stability, because it cares about stability. Even if you don't care about stability, your spine does. But you don't want that kind of stability because it's going to restrict your movement and it's painful and it's going to cause problems elsewhere. I need to address torsional imbalances before stability issues. Stability first. Attacking the symptoms can even damage your joints. The central structure needs to have integrity so the rest of the body can as well, right? Torsional imbalances like pelvis is rotated, and the neck's going to counter-rotate, so your body can keep going straight. So now you're just a twisted mess. Your spine has done a lot of torsion to do that. And you think, well, if you get those torsional elements out, we'll have stability. Not necessarily. If we're not addressing the strength of the spine, even if you have a twisted spine, you work on getting strength, that's going to limit some of that torsion already, and then your body is going to react better to these corrections because you've come in, and I have too, where adjustments just hurt. Even just so much touching. I remember being in student clinic and getting worked on, and they'd be like touching my back, and things are just popping. He's like putting two fingers on my back, and they're all sore. Those thoracic things are sore. And now it's like I don't feel any of that because there's actually stability there. It doesn't mean that there's not things out of place. It doesn't mean that I don't get adjusted because I want to keep that balance going. But there was just so much injury that even just light touch, I could feel the damage there. Sometimes you don't really feel that throughout the day until someone starts working on you. You think, oh, that's just normal. You're touching me. It should hurt. It's not right. It's a warning. It's a warning. But what is he? He's going to adjust all 12 of my thoracics that are injured. Doesn't matter. You can put it back in place. I would do the foam roller all the time. But I feel good for a second. 5 minutes later, I'm like, oh, I need that foam roller again. I need to get that anterior hug adjustment all the time. Bam, things would move. It didn't last, right? Stability issue. So we need to address stability first before we can address these imbalances in the spine. We could try as chiropractors. And it can get you some relief, and that gives me a chance to kind of coach you on the rest of this stuff. That's why I continue to do it, but I often feel like I am putting the cart before the horse myself. I'm a walking contradiction. I understand that. Diction. I need to lose weight to get a pain. I hate this one. You could be like me and have a belly and have stability, right? Think about it. There's guys that are muscly that are heavier than you, right? That can have stability. So it's not the weight. I mean, if you're starting to hit really, really heavy weight, but resistance is good. So we need resistance. Our bodies thrive off it. Without gravity, we would all be a lot shorter. Our feet naturally our heels push the ground away to drive our bodies upward, and this activates the muscles that take pressure off our discs and joints. Muscles are designed to build back stronger the more resistance they face, right? Like we talk about muscles, they get damaged, they'll heal faster. When you work out, your micro tears in the muscles, they're going to build back stronger. That's why you get the big biceps like the Arnold. Because you work the muscle, tears, builds back stronger. Same with those spinal muscles. Little tiny muscles, but they can make dramatic change. We need that stability. Left alone, our joints and discs, only defense is to stiffen. Just like we talked about, just reiterating here. Stiffen to offer stability. Compressed, sad stability, restricted motion, and life. I couldn't have said it better myself. That's the way to put it. So it's not the weight. The weight can wait. I think that was a rule of mine back in the day. The weight can wait. Work on stability first. Are you sensing a theme? Stability first. If you remember anything. Posture is genetic, and I cannot do anything about it. I've lost patience over this. Yes, there's genetic things you need to work on. We all have crosses to bear. I've let my injuries depress me to the point of suicide, but they can also be used as fuel. Knowing your weakness, understanding it, and attacking it daily has made me a far stronger human than I was before my injuries. Doesn't mean that we can't be held back by them, but we can still become better. We can still improve, and we can still work on things. And working on things gives you a reason to wake up in the day, knowing that it can be better in the future. So work on it. There we go. It's the end. There's your 12 misconceptions of foundation training. Hopefully that's encouraged you to go to the foundation training website, subscribe. Don't just do their 12-minute events. Start with the anchoring and decompression. Start with the basics and then build up more. I also have a playlist too. You can message me, leave a comment if you want to how I approach it, which is just a little bit different. But really, I enjoy foundation training's principles, and I always push people there. But I have a channel as well, iterating things the way they've made sense to me, because the way someone explains something might make sense to you. And then sometimes I have to interpret what they're saying in foundation training in my own mind. Like, oh, they're saying this. It's the same way people say, increase your load tolerance versus decompress. There's different terms, there's different ways it's described that'll just click with certain people. So I know when I talk, people aren't necessarily getting it. So I want to have other resources where they could approach it and attack it, right? I've never made a dime off my channel. That's not why I do this. It's because I actually want to help people help themselves. And so I can actually help them with chiropractic, right? A lot of times, just because I've adjusted you, sometimes I feel like I've even enabled you not to work on yourself. So sometimes I feel like I'm doing negative things for people with chiropractic. And I want it to be this balance where you're coming in, working on stability, and we're addressing these imbalances as well at the same time. Climbing the peak, always getting better. Have a great holiday, everyone. Dr. Klein, out.